Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at the scariest creepy stories told by families. So yeah, let's just get right into the video. My grandmother is getting pretty old now, so she tells this story more often than she used to. In the 60s, she took her 3 young kids and left her abusive husband. The only house she could afford to rent at first was a ramshackle 4-room farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. It didn't even have indoor plumbing, just an outhouse and a well up back where they drew water. According to her and my mother, every night around 2 a.m., they would hear the back door into the kitchen unlock and open. It was an old door, and both those actions had very distinctive, unmistakable sounds. They would then hear heavy footsteps walk across the creaky kitchen floor to the water bucket, and the water dipper would rattle against the bucket, like someone was dipping out a drink of water. And then nothing. It scared the shit out of her, of course, but once she ascertained that no one was breaking and entering, so there was no one to shoot, she settled down. In her eyes, whatever was happening, it wasn't harmful. My mum, on the other hand, was the only kid old enough to really understand what was happening, and it freaked her out. So my grandmother decided to get her sister, my great aunt Sue, to stay over one night. They planned to sit up and see what the hell was going on. My mum wasn't going to join them, but she couldn't sleep and felt safer in the room with them, so she was there as well when 2 o'clock rolled around. They were sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when they heard the back door unlock and swing open. The thing is, they were staring straight at it and it didn't move. Same with the footsteps and the water dipper. They saw nothing, even though they could hear it clearly, even discern the directions of the noises. That was pretty much that. It kept happening every night. They didn't stay in that house long because my grandfather found a job and a better rental close to town, and my mum was super happy to get out of there. So my grandmother still talks about it sometimes, and it's strangely hilarious because she's so unbothered by it. I mean, I would pee my pants, but the last time I asked her why it didn't scare her, she said, well shit, he was just thirsty. True. True, every single night at 2 a.m., the ghost is just drinking water. Isn't that crazy? What have they been doing out at 2 a.m.? Clubbing. But how do you just look at an area and hear all the noises that are coming from that area, but there's like no one there? And like nothing is moving, but you hear everything that is moving. Isn't that crazy? That's freaking scary. My grandmother always tells a story of a man in a yellow coat. He knocked on the door of her and my grandfather's home one day. They were a young couple at the time. He was European. She's not exactly sure what nationality, but he was wearing a yellow coat. Being religious and the kind of people who would always help others, they invited him in for tea, asked him about himself, etc. He wouldn't give much away. What? Why would you? Why? Man, people back in the days, they'd just be inviting anyone in. The second time he appeared unannounced at the front door, my grandparents already had friends over, but invited him to stay anyway. As soon as he came into the room, everyone there started to find excuses to leave the room or not look this man in the eyes. One by one, everyone left the room until he was the only one left there. And when they talked about it later, each person felt an indescribable fear when around this man in the yellow coat, like he had a sinister aura. From then on, my grandparents tried to find excuses not to be around him, even though he continued knocking on the door from time to time for seemingly no reason. One day, my grandmother collected the mail and found a handwritten letter from him saying that he was going to kill them both, my grandparents, and that he would not stop even if they cried and begged him to, and how they would both burn in hell. Naturally, my grandmother was terrified, and even though he never followed through on his threat, she would occasionally see him walking around town in his yellow coat and remember it all over again. I think he probably had major issues, but this story gives me the shivers whenever someone brings it up. That's freaking scary. I think he was planning that on the first day, but because the grandparents were so welcoming and inviting, maybe he felt like a bit bad, so he didn't go through with it. And then the second time he was going to go through with it, but then he realized that the grandparents had guests. And then he was like, maybe not, maybe the next time. But then the next time the grandparents started avoiding him and didn't let him in anymore, so he couldn't even go in and try to kill them anymore. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's freaking scary. But seriously, don't let anyone in your house that you don't know. Even if I do know the person and they turn up to my house unannounced, I'll be like, excuse me? Why didn't you tell me you were coming? My dad once traveled through northern Mexico with some of his siblings and their spouses. They stopped somewhere to sleep for one night and had a terrifying encounter. I don't remember what the layout of the room was, but my dad did say that several of the beds were placed next to each other. They used those thick Mexican stripe blankets due to the low temperatures up in the mountains. He woke up in the middle of the night and felt the coldest sensation he's ever experienced going down his back before one of my aunts started screaming. Someone turned on the light to find my aunt sitting up and crying in bed. There was a huge clunk of her hair missing. When they looked underneath her bed, they found her head just lying on the floor. My dad says she was in the middle of the bed, so no one could figure out what happened until she calmed down somewhat. Apparently she woke up and felt a big hand with long fingernails pulling on her hair. They didn't sleep much after that. In the morning, the owner asked the group if they had been by to visit the previous night. Excuse me? Like, tell them earlier, you know? The person was really like, oh, did they visit you? Who? You know what I mean? Like, at least give them like a warning. Yeah, you know, some of these ghosts do come by sometimes, so yeah, some things might be happening. No, they were just like, did they come by? Oh, okay. That's actually so freaking creepy. Some countries are just more known for their ghosts. My dad was 18 when his father, my grandfather, got ill and became bedbound. One evening, Dad was sitting with his father talking about various jobs he'd need to do on the farm. After talking for a while, my grandfather asked Dad if he wouldn't mind going out to the dairy, milking parlour to get a bottle of whiskey he kept out there. Probably hide it there from my grandmother, who was a bit too generous with the whiskey when the guests came. My father went out and was looking for the whiskey. The dairy had one little window at the back that looked out onto the farm. On the other side of the window was a pit where all the cows' shit from the winter was kept. If you stood, you would sink immediately and suffocate to death. Anyways, as my father was looking for the whiskey, he heard 3 solid knocks on the window. Knocks heavy enough to break the window. He froze on the spot because he knew there was no way anyone could knock on that window. After a few moments, he snapped out of it and realized what he had heard. Death knocks from the banshee. It was a sign that someone close to you would die. He immediately ran back into the house and up to his father. He found his father dead with his 2 hands together as if he was praying. Dad believes his father knew what was happening but didn't want him in the room to experience it. Dad said he had been in a lot of pain that day. He never found that bottle of whiskey. That's so sad. The dad had a feeling, the grandpa had a feeling, and then he just told the dad to just, go out, look for my bottle of whiskey. But he knew that he was just gonna go, yo. That is scary though. Knocks from the banshee. Oh hell no. I have a personal rule that I always turn off the radio whenever I enter a cemetery out of respect. My wife and I were driving one day and came upon a cemetery I was planning to visit. The cemetery was very old and decrepit. There was no way to drive into it, so I parked on the road. I told my wife I would just snap a couple of photos. I ran in, took a few pictures and left. When I got in my car, my wife was white as a sheet. She told me to get her out of there quickly. As we drove away, I asked what happened. She explained that the minute I entered the cemetery, the radio stopped. And the minute I exited the cemetery, it went on again. I guess one of the ghosts were like, oh, it's the regular, it's him again. Oh, he forgot to turn off his radio, let me do it for him. That's a bit creepy. There's a story about my great-grandfather. He was heading home from church one evening. He was on a cart being pulled by a horse and he was alone. As he got close to home, he noticed someone walking in an overgrown area full of weeds. He called out to the person and they stopped walking and seemed to turn to him. They began walking towards him, and as they came out of the cover, he saw that they didn't have a head. His horse started to panic and started freaking out. As he took off in the cart, the headless person started running at him and followed behind him until he was out of sight. He refused to ever go back that way again. What? He's headless though. How does he know? You know what I mean? How does he know which way to follow? Well, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts are. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope you guys liked it and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!